Hello everyone and welcome back to DiabloCast, your Diablo 3 podcast. Here we keep you up to date on all things Diablo 3 related and share with you our thoughts and opinions on any recent news and updates. And this week we have got some very big, very controversial stuff to talk about. I'm sure most of you already know the major topics that have been running around the rumor mill, but they're not rumors, they're all facts. I'm just kind of digging myself a grave here. So anyways, as always, I'm your host, Dennis Force Hamill. With me as always, we've got Kevin Sixen Carlino.
What's going on?
And Dylan Tempest Foot.
Hello, everyone.
Dylan, you've been on quite a few of these recently. I'm feeling like you're starting to be a regular here.
Well, it's a lot of fun, and glad to be here.
Except for our hour and a half prep time. That's terrible. Of course.
I know. I woke up early this morning for you guys.
We don't even prep. We just sit there and talk about absolutely nothing.
I know.
Well, whatever. It's
so we
ammo
prepped
for the spoof reel, so.
Yeah.
We prepped for an hour and a half for a DiabloCast and talked about nothing but World of Warcraft, StarCraft 2, and Titan.
Don't tell
Well,
people
I
that, please. All right, so this week's DiabloCast, we're going to be discussing the conference call that took place yesterday and the live DiabloCast that coincided with that. Also discussion of Diablo 3 beta plans for the third quarter of this year, basically what we've expected. We will also discuss what you should expect in the beta. We have basically a clear understanding what the beta is going to hold. And then lastly, that all of those major topics such as the auction house, skill removal, runestone revisions, and the PvP system. So with that said, let's jump right into the first topic, which was yesterday's conference call and the live DiabloCast. So yes, yesterday we did have the special live edition of DiabloCast, and we did that pretty much at the same time as the Activision Blizzard conference call. Most of the call was financial stuff for Activision and Blizzard plans for the upcoming year. Important things to note when discussing their financial model, a big thing that came up was the auction house, and we'll be talking about the auction house later in the podcast. But it is important to note that, when addressing their investors, Activision Blizzard, they were like, hey, we've got this auction house in Diablo 3 that we're going to be able to siphon some money from. So obviously making their intentions clear in terms of the benefit that they get from this. And as scary as that is for fans, realize that this is money that's hopefully going to be reinvested in the game. Live DiabloCast was a lot of fun. If you haven't caught it, go ahead and check it out. Now, during the last part of the investor conference call, they were discussing plans for the future, and that pretty much means the third and fourth quarter of this year and then next year. And they did discuss Diablo 3, mentioning specifically that Diablo 3 is still aimed for the third quarter of this year. There's about 6 weeks left, so between now and the end of the next 6 weeks, we are expecting the beta. And they also mentioned that they're still planning for that 2011 release. So guys, this is just, again, I'm sure you guys were PO'd. Like, we were frustrated yesterday without the announcement, but I think it's still exciting that they are informing us that, hey, it's coming this quarter still, right? Is that...
Well, I guess we kind of assumed it was coming this quarter because they told us it was coming this quarter 4 months ago. But, I honestly thought at this last conference call they're going to be like, hey, beta's starting this month for sure, like they did with StarCraft 2. So, in that regard, I was a little bit disappointed. But, I guess we should still be happy because it's still coming this quarter. So, at the most, it'll be next month, I guess it can't be that bad.
And
it's bad.
my sentiments are that, if... During this call, if they weren't still planning on this quarter, I think they would have announced it. I think they would have been like, it's not going to be the third quarter anymore. We're bumping it back to the fourth. So given that they're still on track for this is pretty exciting. In fact, to add to this, shortly after the conference call and shortly after the recording of the podcast, there was a blue post telling everyone to update their profile settings, their beta profile settings. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a great sign because they're obviously closer than maybe we may initially think. Dylan, how do you feel about that?
I think it's definitely good news on the horizon. If they're doing that, then they really have an idea of exactly what they want for system specs and the systems that they want to try it on. And so I feel like this might be like the last hurdle. We may see it in a month, maybe a month and a half. So obviously I wish it had been next week, but
yeah. I wish it would have been yesterday. I was planning to stay up all night.
Me
there was
too.
no sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to throw this out there. We were able to opt in for the Diablo 3 beta like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I know,
throwing that out there.
but I think the point of this is the timing. The timing's rather impeccable, I would have to say. Right after the conference call, and they know that there was a lot of hype behind it. They're not blind to the public expectations. They knew that a lot of people were expecting something here, and I think that almost immediately after the call, and given that they didn't give a specific announcement, the fact that is when the blue post went up that said, hey, we've updated our software and we want everyone who's interested in the beta to go ahead and update their beta profile settings. So with that said, anyone listening, if you haven't done it yet, update your beta profile settings. There's a post right on Diablo Fans. I also made a video right on the YouTube channel that shows you exactly how to do it. Pretty simple, but even if you've done it already, you want to do it again because they're suggesting it. So I would listen to them if you want to get in, essentially. So I don't know. I'm still optimistic, and I realized yesterday during the live podcast, like immediately after the news, you guys were just silent. And I was just like, oh, man.
Well, it's a little butthurt, I'm going to be honest.
I was like,
a little bit butthurt.
This is going to be super depressing. So I tried to keep on the optimistic face. But in all honesty, I mean, that's just how I feel. I feel like we're still good. We still have the green light for this quarter. So I'm not really too concerned. So with that said, given the fact that we are still expecting it, within the next 6-7 weeks before the end of the quarter, what is the beta going to consist of? Now, we talked about this a little bit in the last podcast, and the reason we're kind of going over some of this stuff again is because last podcast was kind of mumbled, and we did touch on some things, but we weren't able to go into much detail. So what to expect in the beta? Well, the beta got play tested basically last week. They said that what was present at the media event that both Kevin and I went to was pretty much almost a full working version of the beta. There's a few things that they're changing, but what to expect? Well, it's going to be about a third of Act 1. You're going to have access to all 5 characters. I've got this list up here. It's going to be up until the Skeleton King Leoric. You'll also have access to, I believe it is artisans and followers as well.
Yep.
And then was there any other big thing in there? I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, those 3 quest items, the Stone of Recall, Cauldron of Jordan, and Nephilim Cube, we get all that stuff in Act 1.
Yeah.
We won't have runes until Act 2, and there's no PvP.
Sure. So I guess the only major things, I mean, besides not being able to progress beyond the first third of Act 1 that we'll be missing out on is the PvP system. The runestones, I believe, it's not. I know they said that in the retail version it won't be until Act 2, but I am hoping that they drop it in the beta just so we can play around with it.
I should also throw this out there. Supposedly there was a level 13 cap on the beta client that we played. I guess the guys from Judge Hype, it's a French European fan site. I guess they hit the level cap. Mm-hmm. Now I don't know if it's like a hard level cap on the beta or if it's just because we stopped getting experience from, the monsters at such a low level. Because obviously at level 13 you're not going to get much experience from a level 1, 2, 3, low level monster. But supposedly that cap is there. Now, you and I didn't get to it, but I just figured we should throw it out there.
Yeah. I know our playtime was rather fragmented, and we were trying to kind of take note of everything that was going on as well. But that could also be something that is, I mean, it isn't. We didn't play an exact copy of the beta, just the general outline.
Right.
Like they're still adding and subtracting things. I mean, when we played it, there weren't any artisans, and there weren't any followers either. And it says right here that there were followers. I didn't get a follower.
Yeah, at least I thought. Yeah, you did.
I did?
You were the one that got the follower.
I guess I'm really tunnel visioned.
I think it's the Templar dude was the follower, and the artisan. I looked at you and I said, "Hey, that's the artisan." We did a quest for the artisan.
Yeah.
It was like we killed his. Okay, spoiler. We killed his wife or whatever. We helped him kill her, and that was when he came back to town with us.
If people listen to this stuff, then they're spoilers, whatever. If you're listening to this, then you should expect that stuff.
You say spoiler alert after you say it.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't say who we killed.
If you don't want to know this, you shouldn't have listened to this 10 seconds ago.
I don't know. Whatever. I mean, if someone's diving this deeply and listening to, as I refer to it, an obscure Diablo podcast on YouTube, then they can expect to get spoilers. So.
True.
But yeah, it's pretty neat. I mean, overall, the content's pretty thin, and I know Dylan, that's something that you were kind of a little frustrated with. Getting your hands on the beta. I know you wanted to play more, so you want to voice your opinion on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I mean, I'm grateful anyway. Just get the opportunity to play. I definitely don't want to seem ungrateful for that. I mean, I'm gonna get a chance to play the game before it comes out. That being said, it's only about an hour and a half or less of play of of actual play time. You times that by that amount of characters, and that's a lot of time just sitting around, having just had a taste of it and having to wait for the actual release. I think I'm gonna go stir crazy.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I mean, what is it? Total will have like, I don't know, maybe between like 5 and 7.5 hours of playtime total.
yeah, I
If
mean
we
that's
play
gonna
all
happen the
five
first day.
characters.
I mean, let's not lie, that's gonna happen the first day.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know. I'll definitely play that the first day, but then the problem is there's really not much else to play. So, I mean, I'll probably, me personally, I mean, of course, I'm going to be playing the beta throughout the entire time, just doing whatever the hell it is that I can, because I mean, I'm sure you guys will also, just because we have content to provide. But for the regular average user, I mean, there's not going to be much for them to do.
And I think they are expecting a turnover in the beta, and that may result in more keys or
Right.
whatever, just given the small amount of content. I think the other thing to note too is that overall, I'm expecting the actual length of the beta to be relatively short. I know that we previously reported 6-month beta because that's what we were informed about, but I think we do have to take into consideration that this is going to be partially including all of the internal testing that's been taking place for the past few months now. So.
Hmm.
That's just overall. I mean, I'm thinking it'll be closer to a month, but I know Kevin, you said that you're expecting the beta to be maybe about 2 months, and if we have about around a September start time, that puts us sometime around December. So
Yes, I mean, like I was saying before to you guys, I mean, there are things that they're going to need to test over time. For example, they're going to need us to stress test, which I would hope that they want to do over time instead of just say, okay, everybody just log on a server for a day and then okay, it works or it doesn't work. I mean, I'm hoping that that's something they're going to want. And then they were talking about patching the auction house into the beta at a later date. So I mean, obviously that's going to need to be something that they need to watch over time because they're going to need to see how gold as an economy is going to work because they're shooting for gold being the economy. So
Well, to be honest, I don't think they can even really test the economy as a whole until the game release, just because it's going to be purely a gold economy, whereas there's going to be a money value economy when the game releases, and that's going to set the standard for gold. And in addition, there's no runes in the beta, so I think runes in gold and money are going to be the three big currency types, and we're only going to have access to one of them.
So, just want to chime in there. I'm just upset even hearing the word runes because because of the prompted possible revisions to the Runestone system is something that I'm not entirely thrilled about, and I think overall you guys aren't really thrilled about either.
yeah, well, I mean, in the interview, I was giving Jay Wilson crap for it.
Well, I mean, it's just a strong inquisition, and that's okay. You know what I mean? I mean, we won't go to the depths of other reporters and insults and mud throwing and name calling. That's very unnecessary. We're
Oh,
all
of course.
adults here, but still,
Right.
I mean, a strong inquisition is certainly a good thing, especially when you're opposed to a certain system that may be coming into place. And let's just jump right into it then, because I think we pretty much covered everything that the beta is going to hold. When it comes to the Runestone system, there are some big changes that, like I just mentioned, we're really not thrilled about. You want to kind of run over how the Runestone system is going to look as opposed to how it used to be, Kevin?
Right, okay, so from what I understood, and I guess we should talk about it right, what it is currently. Currently, runes, 5 different types of runes, and I don't, what is it, indigo, obsidian, crimson,
Alabaster,
yeah, alabaster, and then I didn't
And-
think I was going to be able to remember the 5th one.
golden.
Is it golden?
Yeah.
Okay, alright, so that's the 5 types of runes. And then, levels 1 through 7 of each rune can drop. And actually, I asked about that in the interview, and what they do is they make it progressively better. So like a level 7 rune is going to be stronger than a level 1 rune, obviously. Maybe, whether be it damage or maybe say something like magic missiles, maybe a level 1 rune only splits it into 3 different missiles, whereas a level 7 may split it into 12 different missiles or something along those lines. Just so you guys get an idea. So currently, what's in the game right now is it'll drop any one of those 5 runes at whatever level between 1 and 7, and then when you get it in your inventory, you take the rune and you put it over a skill, and it shows you what that rune does for each particular skill that you highlight over. So taking Magic Missile again, if I take let's say a golden rune, and hover it over. Or sorry, I'm wrong. It shows me what it is that particular rune does for all of my current active skills. So let's say I have Magic Missile, Arcane Orb, I don't know, some kind of one of the stone armor for the wizard, Electrocute, and Disintegrate. So if I hover over my golden rune in my inventory, it'll show me what the golden rune would do in each of one of those 5 active skills. So that's good. I like knowing what it is that I could potentially use the rune for.
What is it that Jay said? Jay said that he thought that was a nightmare point of comparison.
Well, basically, yeah. So I mean, it's a lot of information for the user to look at. No, for one, and number two, I mean, it's just like a wall of text on your screen, which I guess they don't really like. I mean, personally, I like seeing everything that I could potentially use it, and otherwise, I have to alt tab and go to my website. Although I want you guys to come to the website. I mean, I don't.
I think something that they could have done too, just to add in before you move on to your next point, is maybe instead of okay, I mouse over this in my inventory, and based on my active skill list, it'll show that wall of text. Because, like, each rune effect can be a few sentences, so that would be a very large box. They could have made it so that maybe you click on the rune, you drag it over your skills, and then it shows whatever one you're hovering over what it does to it. I think that would be an effective way of doing it.
That was what I said at first, by accident. So, yeah, I mean, I think that would be a cool idea. And actually, I want to say that was in one of the BlizzCon builds, and I don't know why they changed that. But anyway, yes, I agree with you. I think that would potentially fix one of the problems. So when we were at the press event last week, Jay Wilson was talking about this new idea that they were tossing around. Now, it's not implemented in the game yet. They're not sure how fun it might be. They may never, ever use it, so we may not ever see this. It's just, I mean, he was just theory crafting with us. So those of you that are curious, if you're mad, don't be mad about this, because we don't really know if they're gonna use it.
Yeah, it's not set in stone.
Right, and he made that very clear. Like, he said it 2 or 3 times throughout the whole interview.
He's like, this could suck, so don't.
Right. Okay, so instead of dropping levels 1 through 7 and 5 different runes, it'll drop a gray unattuned rune. Now, it still will have levels 1 through 7 on it, so it could be a level 1 unattuned rune, and it's just a rune. It's nothing particular. So let's say it drop a level 1 gray rune, the unattuned rune. Okay, so now it's in my inventory. I don't see anything on it. There's absolutely nothing. It's just a blank rune. That's it. Now I can take that rune and I can plug it into any one of my skills. I don't know what it's going to do, but I can plug it in. So let's take Magic Missile, for example. I take my gray unattuned rune and I stick it in my Magic Missile. Now Magic Missile, what it does, it's going to roll a random affix and a random effect. So I don't really have a list of affixes, here, because we don't really know all of them. But let's take, I don't know, let's call it Undead, and let's say it's an Indigo rune. So now my unattuned gray rune will turn into an Undead Indigo rune of Magic Missile. So what that does is, I'm just making this up here. Let's say Undead is +5 health and +5 block. Or actually, what it does is this random affix, I'm assuming it'll roll something, a random number. So let's say 5 is the max and 1 is the minimum. Let's say I get a perfect one, which is why I don't really like the system, because I might not get a perfect one. Maybe I'll get a +1 to health and +1 to block, and then an Indigo rune. So maybe Indigo rune isn't what I wanted. Maybe I wanted a Crimson rune or a Golden rune or an Alabaster rune or anything else other than an Indigo. So now when I take that rune out, it's still an Undead Indigo rune of Magic Missile. So the rune permanently, it has permanent affixes and the permanent effect, and it's also permanently tied to Magic Missile. So if I want to try and trade somebody else for, let's say, a perfect undead rune of Crimson, so now I have to attempt to find somebody that has found a +5 block, +5 health, and Crimson type effect on Magic Missile. And my personal feelings behind this is that it's too much randomness. Because I could go through potentially 20 different level 7 runes while I'm trying to get my Crimson rune. And let's say I finally get a Crimson rune, and it's a horrible Crimson rune and only adds +1 everything instead of the potential +5. Now I'm still trying to get better gear. I don't like not being able to see what I could potentially have, and then the chances of it having a random effect also don't really float with me. I mean, maybe I guess I would tolerate having random affixes and having them drop all 5 types of runes. That way, at least I could still see what rune I could potentially have. I mean, I could because like I said before, I could go through 20 different level 7 runes and never get what I need.
All right, well, we'll give Kevin a break since I think he just talked for about 10 minutes straight.
I'm sorry, guys.
so no, I mean that's pretty much the rundown of the system, and obviously the major hang-up is that you don't know what type of rune effect that you're going to get. This is the biggest driving force, or the biggest bonus to the rune system, is that each rune type, the 5 different types that we mentioned, Crimson, Indigo, Obsidian, Gold, and Alabaster, has a different effect on a spell. So if we're starting off with these gray runes and we don't know which one it's going to roll, especially and this isn't just like, oh, well, there'll be a lot of runes. There will not be a lot of level 7 runes. It'll be difficult and costly, likely, to get level 7 runes.
They're supposed to be rare and unique. They're supposed to be hard to find.
So you finally get a level 7 rune, and you want the Crimson effect on a certain spell because the other effects are crappy for you. You put it in, and shit, you don't get it. What are you supposed to do? That's going to be frustrating. Dylan, how do you feel about that aspect of it, or is there any part of this new system that you're maybe happy with or kind of frustrated with?
I'm at a mixed thing. I actually like the randomized stats mechanics because, like the +5 or the +3, because it gives you something more to strive for. So like, okay, well, say we do it in another way. This is theory crafting, but say, you put a Crimson rune in, and it's gonna be a Crimson rune, but it has a randomized as far as stats. So okay, I got the ability that I wanted from my spell, but maybe it's not the best I could get. But it's still doing what basically I wanted it to. So now my spell's working, but I still have something to strive for. Because I'm like, well, wait a minute. I do want to eventually switch that out with the highest possible. But for now, I'm all set.
See, now that I said that I would tolerate. That I guess I would be okay with. Having each rune drop and then have it roll random affixes once I plug it into a skill. That I guess I would be okay with. Because at that point, like you said, you would still be striving to get better gear. But in the end, it would still be giving you the same effect that you wanted.
Exactly. And then, but I mean, on the flip side of it, the total randomized stats, I mean, year one, these are supposed to be really rare, but it's sad, but in most cases, certain spells are going to be, like, we'll call it the metagame, is going to be very specific. Okay, well, this rune works best for this spell. See, all the other ones are going to get trashed, so they're not going to be really used in the economy or in gameplay. So, okay, as rare as level 7 runes are, you have to divide them by all the skills played, and then you have to trash all the ones that won't be used.
Yeah.
And it just seems like this huge wasteful way of doing it.
So, just to throw in, though, once more, this is not set in stone. They're not guaranteed to be doing this, but bringing it up is bringing up multiple issues, as we've been discussing here. They did mention, though, it was mentioned that there may be a possibility of the Mystic being able to wipe the effects off of rune. Now, if that happens, then all of a sudden this is okay, because now it becomes like a gold dump. You know?
I'm glad you brought that up, and I was going to say it if you didn't. I was kind of hoping you did, so I didn't talk so much. but yeah, that was because I had brought up some of these points in that interview. I know I'm sure you remember, Dennis, and that was what Jay Wilson had. That was his response to my problems of never being able to get what I need, wasting 20 runes. Basically, was that the Mystic maybe, and now again he didn't say this is what they're gonna do, just that they're tossing it around. Maybe what'll happen is the Mystic can wipe it clean for you, and you can re-roll the rune again in that skill, which, like Dennis was saying before I so rudely cut him off, would be a nice gold dump.
Yeah, no, it's. I think that. I mean, overall, I like the part of it. I guess I'm feeling the same way as Dylan is, basically, that I do enjoy the random what are we calling them, the affixes for it, and
yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, and I do like that. I just wish that they would go back to this is a Crimson rune and it has a random affix. That's fine, that is great, but the completely randomized, I just think that's going to be really frustrating, because and there's 1 of 5 possible effects, because there's 1 of 5 possible runes. I guarantee the first time I get a level 7 rune, I put it into a spell, I am not
what you want.
I am not going to get the effect that I want. It is going to be just something terrible. So
yeah, I actually really agree with that, and I also think that it would if you have the Mystic, able to perform that function, fantastic. But if they, make them Crimson Runes and Indie Runes, it will still provide that purpose. Because, okay, it's going to do that, but people will still wipe it just to, get a better chance of getting their stats.
Yeah.
So, they'll continue like, okay, well, if you make, these runes pretty rare, well, okay, well, I want a better one. So I'm going to, spend some gold. I'm going to keep on wiping it until I get something that I'm more happy with.
And if one of the major driving forces behind this proposed change, and this is, I think that this is what he mentioned being a major driving point, is, he mentioned the nightmare point of comparison when mousing over a rune, say a Crimson Rune, and it displaying all the different effects on your active skills. If that's really the issue that they're running into, I believe in Blizzard that they can come up with a better point of comparison to make it easier. In fact, just right off the top of my head, like something great, maybe you could have an InGame Journal that lists every rune. It's like categorized. Like StarCraft 2, there's a help menu, like a tutorial menu. Maybe there could be something like that for Diablo 3, where you just, you open up this journal and you're like, okay, this is a Crimson Rune, and I'm playing a Barbarian, so this is what a Crimson Rune does on every Barbarian skill. And it could be tabbed, like spoilers, how it's minimized until you click on it. So it wouldn't be some giant, encyclopedia worth of list. But something as simple as that could work, and it could show you everything, and you could do all your research as he wants. They want us to stay in game. They want us to be immersed as much as possible.
Exactly.
You could still stay in the game if you had this type of journal that just displayed everything for you. And you shouldn't start the game with it, because that'd be weird. You just start. You get jumped. You jump into this world. Well, you jump into this world, and then all of a sudden you have this journal with all these runes, and you're like, "What are runes?" Like, if we're thinking about our character, you know what I mean? But if runes aren't coming out until Act 2, maybe that you get this tome of knowledge about the Runestone system right before you jump into Act 2. Why not? That seems reasonable. You finished the first act of the game, you've accomplished so much, and Deckard Cain's like, here's this Runestone book that I found, and and then there you go, you're all set. So I don't know. I think something like that would work if this is their major hang up, the point of comparison, and how just they're visually displaying things. So
yeah, they could even put in the storyline, like, the first rune that you find isn't a rune, it's a mysterious object. You pick it up, start to quest. You go back to town, Deckard Cain's like, oh, well, you found this. This is some lost piece of, heraldic, artifacts, whatever. And then, and he gives you, the tomb of runic knowledge, which, lets you decipher what everything does.
All right, we have to trademark that right now because I know they're going to use it.
Go.
I know some of the Blizzard staff listen to this podcast, so make sure you get this implemented into the game, because this is perfect. Problem solved. We are all set. All right, so that's about enough about the Runestone system. Hopefully we didn't confuse you guys more than we informed you. But yeah, they mentioned possible changes. There's major problems as far as I can see, and it seems like you guys agree with that. And, maybe if they take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and kind of meld those two things together, that it could work out and it could prove to be something worthwhile. So let's nextly jump into the PvP system. I'm going to save the major hitters, the auction house and skill removal, for last, especially since it's already something that's been beaten to death. So I don't know how much we want to do about those other than sharing our opinions. But so the PvP system, we mentioned it yesterday in the live DiabloCast. There's some pretty big changes, most notably. Well, I don't know if they're changes. I suppose they are. We were expecting a deathmatch, last man standing type of thing, and that's not going to be around anymore. And I've actually already seen threads popping up all over the place of complaints of people saying, why no deathmatch? Why no last man standing? Why is there just a team deathmatch now? And that's what it's going to be. There will be a team deathmatch style, which implies there will be respawns in the arena. So you're in an arena round. If you die, no big deal. You'll come back in 20, 30 seconds, whatever the respawn timer is going to be, and you can keep on fighting. The explanation to this was, PvP's casual. That's what they want it to be, at least as of this moment. And because PvP's casual, the last man standing type of mode was too hardcore. It was too eSporty. We'll put that in quotes there. So, obviously Kevin wants to chime in with that. So how do you feel about that? At least the explanation or just the changes?
Well, personally, I don't like it. I guess if we were given the option, that'd be cool, just to have different PvP modes. But I really liked having the whole last man standing aspect to PvP. It made it feel competitive, which is, I guess, why they removed it, which kind of sucks.
See, and that's here's the thing. Like, this is not. There's no ladder. There is no ranking. Why can't we have that option? Why is that option not available, especially if it's not competitive? I mean, I think about like shooter games that I played, and I love like there's Capture the Flag, there's King of the Hill, there's all these different options, and that's cool, that's awesome. Why, like, come on, why can't there be that? We know you guys can do it because we saw it last year's BlizzCon.
Yeah.
so it's obviously there. Like, give us a list and be like, okay, I want Last Man Standing. I want, especially if there's no ranking. Like, if there's no if there was ranking, I could understand. This is our PvP system. That's it. But there's no ranking. Come on, give me the option, please.
Right, and I mean, essentially, having team deathmatch styled map in such small arenas, all three or every single class has an escape skill. So when one of your team members dies, all you have to do is have the other members of your team escape. So I mean, let's say we have a wizard, or what is it, a wizard, and I don't know, let's say 2 wizards, 2 barbarians. Okay, one of the barbarians dies. Okay, so the 2 wizards can teleport back to where they began, and the wizard can, or the barbarian can leap back to where they began, away from battle, wait for their partner to respawn, and now that you have a 4-on-4 game again. So there's never any reason why you should ever play a 3 versus 4 or a 2 versus 3 game in the arena, which I don't really like. It makes it so that way there are going to be points throughout the PvP game where nothing's going to be happening, which Last Man Standing was definitely not the case. In Last Man Standing, there was something always happening. Damage is always being done. Somebody was always moving around, you know, in some kind of strategic manner, maybe to get a better positioning on the health globes. I'm not a big fan. Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, I actually like the idea of it, but in a particular way. Now, I think you should have both options. Now, the team deathmatch, okay, you know, it's a fun, it's goofy, and it really provides a way for people that aren't experienced in PvP to enjoy it, or as a stepping stone into a more competitive playstyle. But you know, those that really want a competitive, I know all 3 of us do. And if all 3 of us do, you know, there's obviously, you know, millions of other people that probably agree with us, and you know, just as many that don't. But make it an option. Be like, okay, well, I'm going to queue for this, or I'm going to queue for that. You know, it's already obviously, you know, implemented in the game because we've seen it, like, you know, said. Why can't you give us both?
Yeah. From what I gathered, the explanation was that, you know, we don't want to mix up the message of what Diablo PvP is. I mean, this is the explanation that we got from Jay Wilson. He said we can't, you know, tease someone with an esport type of setup, but then not make it an esport and not balance it like an esport. I mean, that's almost like verbatim what he had said.
And that was another one of his responses to one of my questions. I think it was after you had asked about replay features and observer mode functionality.
Yeah.
Basically, he said, well, I mean, that kind of makes it seem like we're looking for esports. And I had said, okay, why can't you just give us those features because they're cool features? Why? I mean, yes, maybe they kind of help esports, but they're things to have that are cool in the game. So why are you purposely going out of your way to kill esports? And like you were just saying, Dennis, his response was, well, if we give you these things, it makes it look like we're going to support esports. So when somebody cries, okay, why is the barbarian so up? We're going to just say because we don't care about PvP balance.
Yeah.
Instead, and then, you know, and from a user standpoint, sure you do. You're giving us replays and observer mode functionality, which sucks. I mean, I wish the public would just understand, okay, they don't want to balance PvP. I want these cool, sweet features like observer mode and being able to gamble on PvP matches and replays. I think that'd be awesome.
I mean, I guess there's a couple of things. The first thing that I would say is, you know, we can still hold out hope for the possibility of these things being implemented into the game later down the road. Obviously, we'd prefer it now as opposed to 2 years from now, but if it came eventually, that'd be cool. Especially the different PvP modes. I think that is not too much to ask, and especially given that it's a casual environment. This actually having different modes is a bonus in a casual environment, you know? Like that's actually a good thing. That's not shouting esports having various different types of modes. It's doing the exact opposite, saying this is casual fun, you know, pick which one you like the best, whatever. But unfortunately, in all honesty, with the known addition of someone's throwing dishes around.
Sounded like somebody broke something.
With the known addition of the Real Money Auction House, you know, PvP balance is just now out the window, and that's just the way it is. I mean, it really, unless they completely changed that or they made purchased gear not usable in the arena, the addition of this type of auction house is probably at least partially a driving force behind them saying, like, we can't balance arena because people can buy gear. You can buy power. There's no way we can try to make this an esport. And having ranking system when you can buy gear is almost stupid because it will be. I know people will argue skills. Yes, skill is very important. And when you're equally geared, skill comes into play. But when you're completely mismatched and geared, you can be the most, mouth breathing, banging your head against the keyboard idiot, and you will still win because gear is powerful in an RPG. That's the facts. If you have solid gear, you're gonna wreck face. so the fact that you can buy gear now, it's just kind of like, well, shit, we're kind of screwed when it comes to PvP. And I think that's part of the reason why they were like, you know what, we can't have a rating system because people will be like, this isn't fair. The only reason this guy's number one is because he spent $1,000 on his tune. So.
Yeah, no, I absolutely understand that, and but there's so many easy ways to fix that. I would even take standardized characters.
Oh yeah,
you don't choose gear. Like you go in, everybody has equal gear. I mean, that side there's no customization, but for PvP, I would take a randomized, like just a regular pre-done character, and then you get to choose your skills. Another aspect, and I know that this one isn't as popular with Blizzard, is to have arena-only gear that you can't use outside of an arena, and that kind of rewards you for playing, but it doesn't affect the economy or the gameplay because you can't use it outside of an arena itself. But I really just don't think Blizzard has a focus on this because they don't make any money off of it.
Well, yeah, it's because of the auction house, and the PvP community. Like, if you're a competitive player, if you like PvP, you like lots of any competitive game. I know, me and you, Dylan, we've played a lot of Halo in the past, and we were big in WoW Arena. Anything that's competitive, you enjoy it. And the PvP community is usually very enthusiastic. And I know that anyone who's involved in any sort of competitive gameplay is like, oh, give us pre-made characters that we can just PvP on, and that's all we'll do all day. And that's the problem, because in Blizzard's eyes, if that's what we do all day, then we're not grinding gear and selling it on the auction house. And this isn't to try to be a negative Nancy, but I mean, from a business stance, I would say I've got a strong business mind. From a business stance, that makes sense. That's perfectly reasonable in Blizzard's eyes. But from a fan stance and from someone who loves competitive play, this is probably one of the most frustrating things that's having me bang my head against the wall like every night because I want competitive arena so bad, but it's not. This is not the game for it. Unfortunately to say, as much fun as it would be, this is not going to be the game for competitive PvP.
Yeah, you say that, and so far it's turning out right. But we're acting like this, like Blizzard is does all of this, and they choose whatever they want, and obviously it's their game, they're going to design it, but they do it in a business model mindset, meaning they're doing everything they do to try to give their customers what they want and what makes them money. So us and the gaming community as a whole can influence us. So if there's enough PvPers that start talking on the forums, call Blizzard, send an email if this is something you're passionate about, get involved and be like, this is something that I really want, and if it might actually affect me actually playing the game. And if enough outcry happens, Blizzard might decide to add it in, or once the game comes out, if you keep on doing it, they might the outcry is so much that we obviously are not catering to this really, really select group of our very loyal gamers, that we're going to add it in.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it is.
And before you cut in, Kevin, I just want to say, outcry doesn't mean trolling and being an idiot. Like, let's be adults and outcry in a reasonable manner, because it seems like there's a lot of people who, when they disagree with something, they just act like they're 5 years old. And I think we can conduct ourselves in a strong manner that voices our opinion without being children. So, go ahead, Kevin.
I agree with you. And I've just been sitting here kind of just sitting back listening for the last couple minutes. And actually, I'd never even thought about that, but as far as Blizzard making money off of, or not making money off of PvPers, I would like to assume that that's not the reason why. We've known for 2 years or so now that Blizzard didn't want to balance PvP. And this is before we even had the auction. We even heard about the auction house. I'm hoping that that's not why Blizzard doesn't want to do it. Jay Wilson just doesn't seem to want to cater to an esport kind of game just because Dustin Browder and his crew have to have a completely different kind of mentality, and at least that was how I understood it. Now, I just wanted to touch on some things that you guys had both said. I believe Dennis brought up the fact that we can, or we know that they can do last man standing because we've seen it already. I don't remember if you remember. I don't know if you remember, but Bashiak had mentioned when we were there that they had already been planning like several different modes for PvP.
Hmm.
Like I think it was you that actually asked the question about, say, horde mode or capture the flag.
Oh
By
yeah.
horde mode, like you and a couple other players are just kind of sitting there while a bunch of monsters just ambush you. And I think that'd be awesome. Or even, and actually you said the same thing, having two different teams with monsters in the arena. How
And
sweet would
Jay
that be?
Wilson said he wants that. He likes
Yeah.
that idea. So
And Bashiak had said that they had done cool things like that, or maybe it was Jay that said that. I thought it was Micah, but whatever. But right, essentially they're planning, or at least it sounds to me like they're planning on doing different PvP modes somewhere down the line.
just
So
not
I
at
don't,
ship.
right, I don't see why they can't add in a last man standing as opposed to a team deathmatch styled PvP arena. I mean, it's very possible. And now let's see, what else did you guys talk about? The whole gear thing. I mean, now essentially anybody could potentially get that gear. Even if they can pay for it, you as a player will never know whether or not your opponent paid for the gear or found it legitimately.
Hmm.
So,
Unless you're playing hardcore.
well, right, well, exactly, because hardcore players can't use the real money auction house.
Mm.
So, I mean, as far as ranking goes, even so, I don't see why we can't have rankings. I mean, even if you do pay, doesn't mean that you'll necessarily be at the top. I mean, you and I may have one tier gear. Maybe let's say we're 3v3ing and we have tier 16 and somebody paid for tier 18 gear. We could still win just because we're better. I mean, skill. Don't get me wrong. Like Dennis was saying, I mean, having the best gear in the game definitely does help, but skill does play some kind of role into your win loss, I suppose.
Yeah, see, I don't know, Kevin. I really disagree there. I mean, I guess it's everybody knows I have sometimes anger issues when it comes to losing over stupid things. But if it's pretty obvious when you play like any type of competitive match, you can generally tell how good a player is by certain habits, like how they move, how they turn, everything like that. And an example of this, if you know somebody that's obviously not practiced or polished at the game, and they're terrible, but they two-shot you because they spent $2,000 on the best possible equipment in the entire game. That's going to be frustrating for anyone, and that more than anything else would cause me never to want to do it again.
Yeah, and just to add this, because I guarantee people in the comments will be like, "Well, you guys are noobs if you lose because of gear." We are players that are involved in RPGs and competitive play for a long time and like top level play. And coming from that experience, gear does make a big difference. It's not the deciding factor, and skill does make a big difference. If you're at or near equal level, skill wins you the game, hands down. But if you're severely undergeared compared to your opponent, then they just they have way too many hit points and they just do way too much damage. And those situations are many times unwinnable unless you like rock paper scissor them. You have a build that completely counters theirs. That's an aside. That's an example of something that kind of makes that situation a little different. But it does make a difference, and I'm going to stand by the fact that part of the reason that they're not having a ranking system is because they know that purchasing gear will make it unfair. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's frustrating. I do definitely agree with what Dylan said, though, and I do think that if there's enough outcry from the strong and enthusiastic competitive PvP community, that things can certainly change. I always reference WoW when I say this. When WoW first came out, there was no competitive arena. Then a few years later, they're at MLG and a quote unquote eSports, however much of an esport an RPG can be. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that post launch, Jay Wilson sees that there's a majority of the players that want a PvP, and I mean, I guess I don't know if it's a majority, but I'm hoping that a majority of the players want some kind of competitive nature in Diablo 3. So I mean, I'm hoping that they patch stuff in for us, gear it towards something. I don't know, fix it. Not that it's broken, but I mean, it's a little bit disappointing. It's not. I mean, I'm still gonna buy the game. I'm still gonna play it nonstop, but I would like to be able to have some competitive nature about it.
I mean, and I just want to, again, I didn't even think they need to say it, but like, I can't agree more with the idea that do it in a constructive fashion, where a post on Twitter saying Blizz you fail, cater to Care Bear noobs. It doesn't do anything. I mean,
Right.
Anytime you insult the development team or Blizzard as a company in whole, it basically just means that you're just okay, it's just a troll.
Yeah. Well, it just makes people look like an idiot.
Well,
like,
exactly.
If you can't form a constructive, reasonable, well thought out thought and write that in sentence form, then you look like a moron. So.
Which is right. Us right now, that is what we're doing. I mean, we're not sitting here QQing and we're not raging about it. I mean, we're having a nice adult, grown-up conversation about PvP.
Yeah.
Well, in addition, I mean, the people that are reading it are obviously human as well. I mean, they're just as prone to be insulted or annoyed as anyone else. And, they're going to look at that. And the moment that they're insulted, they're just going to discount whatever your opinion, thought, or idea was.
Right.
And you're basically just not going to count anymore. So, do it in a constructive fashion. Be like, Blizzard, obviously I'm interested in your games if I'm taking time out of my day to do this. I've been a loyal fan, but this is really what I'm looking to see. And, who knows? Maybe that we can get something going.
Yep, pulling a page right out of How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's Dylan's foot right there for you. But seriously, I mean, that's how you get things accomplished. Is you voice your opinion in a reasonable manner. So, come on, PvP community, any fans, we can do this. At some point, I think there'll be a venue for it. Right now, I think they're a little too far along in development for this to be an option for us before release. That's kind of we've passed that bridge. That's okay though. We'll take this fight towards release and kind of go from there. So, all right. Well, Cyber Dragon's probably pulling his hair out right now and punching the screen.
Yeah, no doubt. Too much PvP.
But I think this was something that was important. It was a big change. It's something that's important to me, and I know it is to you guys. And like I said, the passionate PvP community that is out there and exists. And these things do affect the PvE players, especially the purchase of gear in the auction house. And I feel like the conversation we just had kind of won't weave those two things together. We talked about the effects of the auction house and PvP and how they coincide. PvE, it does affect players as well. Maybe as simple as kind of a pride level, like the guy next to you, oh, his gear's awesome. I wonder if he bought it. But besides that, it's a cooperative game in all fashions when it comes to the PvE. So even if someone does buy gear from the auction house, who's on your team, when you're going through the single player co-op gameplay, the PvE, it's not as big of a deal. Besides your pride maybe getting hurt because he has better gear than you do, but. And that's part of their justification. They're like, oh well, it's a cooperative game, it's casual, so who cares if someone has bought gear? But even that, I mean, I know that I kind of disagree with that mentality. I know Dylan certainly does. So yeah.
Nothing wrong with having strong opinions.
Yeah, well, it's good. It makes you interesting, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, that's the word. All right, so let's move into skill removal since I think we covered two of the major topics. As everyone probably knows by now, if you're listening to this podcast, the actual skill allocation was removed a while back. We learned that attribute point allocation was removed. So a lot of players are saying, where is my customization? The Rune system is going to be a level of customization, but they might be changing that to completely random, so that's frustrating. But the explanation behind skill removal was that people, because of the way the system was structured, where you could just mass dump skill points into Magic Missile, as an example, or Arcane Orb, it made people do just that. And basically, the explanation is that people weren't diversifying their builds. And that's Blizzard wants us to. Blizzard wants us to be using more than 2 or 3 spells and abilities. In fact, they want us to be using 6, to be exact.
Not only that, but an extra 3 passives also.
Yeah. But yeah, because of the way the system was set up, and anyone who's played D2, go back to your experience. Was that not the case for you? I'm going to say 99.9% of the people are going to say yes, unless you're making some sort of off-keel build. Then most builds involved you spending almost all of your skill points on 1 or 2 skills and abilities. Dylan, that was the case for you, more or less, right?
Yep. Well, you'd power all your synergies just to do Blessed Hammer or traps or exactly. It was.
The only reason why you would put skills in or put points into a skill that you weren't using was because it made the skill you were using stronger. It was the only reason.
So my like my understanding of this is that that makes sense to me, because I don't want to use just 2 or 3 skills. I want something that's more engaging and requires a little more thought than spamming left and right mouse click and hitting a couple F keys. Like I want something that's a little more engaging than that. I like that we can be using 6 skills kind of equally, as opposed to using 1 or 2 skills constantly, and then my other skills whenever I come up against someone with an immunity. Like that's boring combat, you know. But I'm also thinking, you know, and either of you feel free to correct me if you see an issue with this, but well, maybe instead of removing skill points, why didn't they just put a cap on it, like a small cap? Like
because at that point
you can only invest 10 skill points into a skill maximum.
Because at that point, I'm still gonna I'm still gonna max the same skill I'm going to be using.
Yeah, but then at least you're with 60 levels, at least you're able to max.
Right. So with 60 levels
skills.
and 6 skills, I'm gonna max all 6 skills I'm using.
Oh, so I guess it makes
Doesn't make sense.
Then. Okay.
Right.
But I mean, still, then that I don't know. I think that. I guess maybe it's just a habitual thing. Maybe because people are used to spending skill points, they feel like they have to, or else it's not fun. It's not customizable. But with your specific example, I guess that kind of makes sense.
And past that, if I have the potential to spend skills, let's say in the beginning of the game I put 5 points into a skill I end up not using towards the end of the game. Now I'm being punished for using my skills when as I level up, instead of hoarding them until I hit max level like everybody did in Diablo 2, which I feel was one of the big reasons behind removing skill points. And Jay Wilson had mentioned that exactly when we were in the interview with him. Mm-hmm. I mean, not only that, but when you respec, all you're gonna do is you're just gonna max the 6 skills that you use. So what's the point? There's not much customization there. You're just gonna max whatever skills you use and be done with it.
Yeah. Oh well, maybe they should let us use more than 6 skills then. I don't know what to say.
Well, the reasoning behind having 6 skills is because it created the most variety in builds.
Yeah, I remember I saw a Bashot's graph or whatever you want to call it. Okay, I understand that. Maybe I'm just trying to argue for argument's sake because it makes for interesting podcasts.
Well, it's good to have both sides.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you feel about that, Dylan? Do you agree with Kevin's explanation behind, even if there were a cap, we would be doing more or less the same thing?
You know what, I hate saying that I'm starting to agree with it, because I like the idea of more customization, and I would have much rather they found a way to make that customization more worthwhile. But I do get the point of it. Because I remember because you basically, by human nature, you're going to do everything you can to make the strongest build, and that generally means maxing out, this very selected amount of skills and using just those. So by limiting the skills, they are in essence doing the exact same thing. But I think that does also change. Like, okay, well, you could also choose, to put points more into like your passives or your, actives, and it just gives you a greater deal of customization. So I would have preferred a more elegant solution of making that work in a more efficient fashion rather than just removing it.
Yeah. Previously, I mean, our skill points, we had separate trait points and skill points. So any skill points we used didn't affect our passives. So, I mean, we had separate passive points, and the same thing, it's the same thing. Well, I guess okay, I guess as far as passives and traits go, it's still a little bit different, because my understanding was that we could use as many traits as we wanted. So we could, I guess, put 1 point into every single trait and have, and have every trait work. It's hard to say this without saying active and passive, because I mean essentially that's what it would be. Traits were passive skills, which is why they became passive skills in this new build. So beforehand we could use our traits and they were passive skills. So but by that I mean that we didn't have to actually actively use them. And there I go, I said active again. So this is just too damn confusing. But I mean, now they're only limiting us to 3 passive skills at a time instead of the entire pool. Which I guess, yeah, you're right, it changes, but I mean, still, if it forces us to create some kind of build, and I mean, you could argue that in the past games, I guess just Diablo 2, there was no customization, because like I was saying, you really only maxed whatever skills you needed to make the one skill you wanted to use stronger, and that was it.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting. I think that maybe attitudes will change a little bit once people actually get to play the game, or maybe they won't, people tend to be stubborn as a general rule of thumb. We don't like change. Like I said, we're creatures of habit. Resisting change is pretty pertinent. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the community reaction is once they start to play the game. I think maybe people will start to understand it a little bit more. I think just listening to the Jay Wilson interview was insightful. I know when I was there, I was like, oh, okay. Now I'm not as angry about this, you know. But it's still people do want more customization, even if what the new system right now is doing accomplishes the exact same thing. People, I still want to spend my 1 skill point every level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess.
But I don't know. I don't think it's the end of the world. I certainly don't think the apocalypse is upon us with these new changes. It's certainly a lot different, and it feels like there's less customization. But I think if you really sit down and think about it, it's pretty much the same thing. It's accomplishing the same thing. Because you would have been, like Kevin said, you would have been maxing out these 6 skills anyways. So what difference does it really make? So yeah, wow. All right. Well, this has been an interesting bulk of content. That pretty much does it for the majority of this week's podcast. I guess we can go ahead and move into.
Do we want to mention something else?
I was going to mention, the fourth something, Dennis. Do we want to mention that?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
Dennis, the fourth something.
Jeez. Okay.
And
well,
actually, there's something else that we can mention too.
The what?
There's also G4 went to Blizzard last night, actually, or at least I think it was last night, and Rob Pardo, I guess, might have slipped up in one of his quotes, and what he said was that currently they have I'm just going to do quotes, so...
Okay, do that.
We do have a full playable alpha state right now, so everyone inside the company can play all the way through and kill Diablo. And what does that mean? That when you play all the way through the game, you kill Diablo at the end.
Yeah.
What that means. So Diablo is going to be the last boss again.
All right, and then right off the heels of that, playing all the way through, well, we know about normal, nightmare, and hell, but we possibly have another difficulty level. And do you have the quote for that as well, Kevin?
Yes, I do.
All right, go ahead.
If you just give me a second to pull it up.
Oh my God.
What? Okay,
You're
I
not prepared.
Paraphrase it.
Forgot all about it, so.
Yeah, it's your
true.
fault. Did nobody really link it? Oh, we didn't link it in the chat. Okay.
All right. Well, basically, it's there's a new difficulty.
I got it.
It looks like there's going to be a 4th difficulty. Take it away, Kevin.
Okay. So, in an interview with Kevin Martins, if I can, maybe I don't have it. Why do I not have it? Why is the page gone?
There's a 4th difficulty. It's called Inferno.
Right.
As far as we know. So that'll be really cool. That's pretty interesting. I hope that it's not just the 3 difficulties spread among 4 difficulties, if that makes sense to you. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that's not the case. I really hope that Inferno is more difficult than anything we ever experienced in Diablo II Hell. Because if that's the case, that would be awesome. Yes. Although, getting one shot every 5 seconds may be frustrating, but that's at least there's some sort of difficulty to it. I mean, that kind of brings us back to old school gaming. Do you guys remember old games where you died every 5 seconds?
Yep.
I mean, that doesn't exist anymore. It really doesn't. And very, very few and far between do we find games that are that frustrating. and I think that a lot, especially the hardcore Diablo fans, are looking forward to that.
Well, this would be funny if this was Blizzard's screw you to us for complaining all the time that this game is becoming too casual. So all of a sudden they just put us in the Crucible and we're walking around oh wow, I fought a little goblin imp and it kicked my ass. But, I would absolutely love a super hard. I really, because I feel like we're gonna do progress through the game pretty quickly, and if I had one that I really felt like I had to buckle down, or you even had to party for to really make a bunch of progress, I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, and I can only imagine all of Inferno, every single mob you come across is just a Diablo.
Well, I mean, maybe it's
every single mob in the game.
Maybe it's not even a difficulty. Well, I mean, obviously it'd be a difficulty, but I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not another playthrough of the game. Maybe it's their way of adding end game content. So we play through normal, nightmare, and hell, and then once we hit Inferno, it's different quests, just something for end game content. And it's really killing me that I can't bring up the friggin' interview. Here we go, finally. It's literally hidden. You can't click a link anywhere to it. Okay, so the exact quote was... I have to Control F. This is so... Okay, so Ultimately, it's going to take the game's harder difficulty modes, Hell and Inferno, to challenge the limits of the best Diablo 3 players. Okay, so maybe I am wrong. Maybe it is an actual difficulty where you play through the game. But still, my line of thinking was, okay, here's a way for them to add end game content without us having to worry, without them having to figure out how to add real end game content in normal and nightmare and allow it to be playable in hell. If you guys understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hope that was an actual slip up. That means we're getting that fourth difficulty. And as Kevin said, I'm interested to see what the context of that will be. I almost expect it to just be a more difficult version. I mean, I almost guarantee that's what it's going to be. But there's a possibility that, as Kevin said, it's going to be different, some sort of different content, be it quest or whatever. So, all right, well then, finally, you guys stop cutting me off. We're going to move right into the poll of the week. All right, so for the last poll we did, we asked you guys what you thought the maximum length of an end-game cooldown should be. It was informed to us a few weeks ago that the last tier of skills would have cooldowns, and we just asked you how you felt about that and what the length should be. It looks like the 2 minutes did win out, and that's looking to be pretty much the default for what Blizzard had planned, at least what they showed to us. Right behind that was 1 minute, and then the dead last place was 5 minutes. So people definitely don't feel like they want 5-minute cooldowns, but they do feel like 2-minute cooldowns pretty much hit the sweet spot. So how about this week's poll, Kevin? Why don't you let everyone know what it is?
So basically, since it seems like everybody wants to talk about the auction house, we want to know what kind of auction house you would prefer. Would you prefer to use the real money auction house, the gold-based auction house? Do you really not care and you'll use either or both? Or actually, that's two different options. Sorry. Will you use either or will you use neither? Yeah. That's the poll of the week.
Okay, awesome, Kevin. Good job. All right, so that does it for this week's poll. To go ahead and vote, make sure you head on over to DiabloFans.com, log into your account, and then you can vote for the poll on the right-hand side of the screen. And next, we're going to be moving into user questions. I know actually that yesterday we mentioned that we would be answering some questions, during the podcast, but we got kind of caught up in things and it didn't happen, so I apologize if you were looking to have your questions answered. We'll try to get a few of those answered today. The first question coming from Mike Blesser, he asks, what was it like playing the Demon Hunter with the new resource system, and what was the monk skill that branched out into 2 and 3 green strikes consecutively? I don't remember the name of that skill. I think it was long reach or something like that.
Okay, good, because I wanted to ask that question. I just didn't remember the name of the skill.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was long reach. That was the name of the, or long arm, or something along those lines. I actually didn't play the monk. I know Kevin did. I pretty much played the barbarian the entire time.
Yeah, but that's one of those later end skills that we're not going to see in the beta.
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, that's a pretty cool skill. Jay Wilson actually talked about it, and he mentioned the fact that it allowed, that it does what you expect it to do. It gives the monk a little bit more of a range ability. So definitely pretty neat implementation there to what seems like just a sole melee close range character. And then the first part of the question, what was the new Demon Hunter resource system like playing that? It's interesting trying to balance the two. It's really hard to decipher how it's going to work out later in the game based on the initial experience, because in the initial experience you only have so many spells and abilities to choose from. I mean, at most we had 3 available unlocked, so you didn't really get a good sense for the balance of it, but I don't know, I think it's all right. I didn't think it was bad. Did you have much experience with that, Kevin?
I played the Demon Hunter a little bit. I think it's pretty cool. Personally, I would have preferred if the 2 different resources kind of affected each other like we speculated it would. So maybe when you use hatred, it takes a little, or it gives a little bit more to discipline and vice versa. I think that would have been cool, but I don't really have any problems with the system they implemented right now. I think it works pretty nice. Yeah.
All right. So how about you, Dylan? You have any questions that we'd like to get answered?
Yeah, and I'm going to apologize first of all because I'm going to butcher this name. So it is from Arjun Sharma, I believe. And the question is it true that the better specs on your computer are the better chance that you have of getting into the beta? And actually, that is not true at all. And in fact, I actually think the very best computers, you're less likely to be selected. Now, Blizzard, when they do any of these games in the beta format, they basically like to test how the game works on a whole variety of systems. The very best, the more, regular, and then maybe like a couple of years older, because they want to design a game where, a large amount of people can play. So they already know the super good computer is going to be able to play it fine. So they like to get a whole range, and they like to get a little bit of the lower end and more of the medium, so that they can design a game with everybody can play.
But that's not to say that having the top end stuff won't get you into the beta.
No,
I mean,
exactly.
It's
But
still
it's not
random.
an advantage. But it's not an
Right.
advantage.
Exactly. It's completely random based on your specs.
All right. How about you, Kevin?
Um. Okay. Frederick wants to know if there's any ideas for Easter egg level, and I'm gonna yeah, I mean, it's safe to assume that they're going to have some kind of Easter egg for us, like they always do. But what Jay Wilson basically said was no comment. I mean, they haven't, they're gonna let us know, so they're gonna spoil it for us. But I'm gonna assume yes, there will be.
Cool. I'm gonna take this question here from Ryan, and because he asks, do you feel that they should make the PvP more of an esport in an expansion? Given the topic of debate we had, I think it's safe to say our opinions on that. But the summarization is, I don't expect it to be an esport, but I would like it to be more competitive and as such more enjoyable for anyone who enjoys competition. So I think that's not too much to ask, in all honesty. And like we mentioned, as time goes on and maybe as the community expresses interest in this, then the probability of these things getting implemented becomes much higher. All right. Do any of you have any more questions that you want to get answered, or?
I'm pretty okay. I don't know about Kevin.
I guess I'm fine. I'm not really saying anything that I really, really, really want to talk about. Not that I don't want to talk about everything, but
yeah, I mean, a lot of these things have been answered. But I'll just field this one last one from Daniel, asking if we noticed anything odd about Kane when you were playing the last game. Was he more fun or more annoying? Anything? I'll tell you out front, in the beta playthrough, I think we only encountered Kane once or twice, at least that I remember, and he only said like one or two sentences. He sounded more or less the same. I will say though, given the interview that Kevin had with Michael Goff, the man who voices Kane, and discussing him, I'll agree with his opinion of the character that he voiced, in saying that feels a lot more weathered now, much older, and having gone through many more things. Just the one or two sentences that I heard him say, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of spot on. It definitely seems like he's much more grisly than he has been in the past. So
yeah.
So pretty cool. We'll be so excited, obviously, for the release of the game. Certainly excited for the beta, however limited that content may be. But yeah, I guess that about does it for this week's DiabloCast. As always, guys, we thank you so much for listening. So for Dylan and for Kevin, thanks again. This has been Dennis, and we will see you next time.
Take it easy, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
All right. Okay, I'm just gonna go.
Okay. Let's do it.
Dylan, you there?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. All right, gonna go in 3, 2. Whew. That one was intense.
I know, that was a good one. I loved it. That was awesome.
We had some good conversation, as angry as people are going to be about PvP.
Yeah, but I mean, still, I mean,
Why does it make people? Why do people get so angry about stupid as crap?
Because they're Care Bears. It's people that are like, they get
there was
mad
something-
because they get owned every single time they've ever fought in a game before.
basically.
Just in general, like, if WoW's ever mentioned, people get angry. If PvP's ever mentioned, people get angry.
Well, I mean,
They already know how PvP focused, this group is. Why does it surprise them every single podcast?
right, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like I'm sure that there's many Care Bear casts out there. Why are you so surprised every single time?
Yeah.